Now, as we get started, this will be in your notes. But if you like turning in your Bibles, I just want to focus in book of Hebrews 24 and 25, the classic passage we go to look at talking about church attendance is where we always go. But if you're looking in Hebrews 10, what the writer of Hebrews has done is from chapters 1 through 9, he's talked about how we have it better in the church than they did in Judaism. You have a better covenant, a better sacrifice, a better high priest. Every chapter can be titled better. So then you get to chapter 10, and then you have the illustration of chapter 11, and then 12 and 13 are what we need to do. But chapter 10 is the crux of the book, really what we're looking at. And the old preachers, way back before they got super serious, called this the vegetable patch, because you have 3 different lettuce places. And they'd go through, and if you look at vegetables, you can kind of come up with something out of Hebrews 10. But let us hold fast, let us draw near, and let us, 24 and 25, not forsake the assembling of ourselves, as is the habit of some, but continue to attend, exhort one another as you go through. So that's what you have running through there. We're going to start and finish class with the same question. And that question is, what should the church expect of its members? When you place membership here, when you obey the gospel and you're added to the church, and I forgot to give you one of these. When you become a Christian, exactly what should the church expect of you? Sorry about that. And it's one of those things where perhaps because of the cultural idea we have of Christianity, we feel like we might offend somebody if we say, okay, now that you're a member, we expect you to be here. Now that you're a member, we expect you to participate or lead in some way. Now that you're a member, we expect you to give on every first day of the week. Now that you're a member, we expect you to whatever it may be. And sometimes it feels like maybe as a church, we don't set an expectation on anybody. We're just happy if you show up sometimes. It's just a nice thing to see you. If you can fit it in your schedule, this is a nice thing. And it's such a different thing than what we think of when we think of how the church is put together. So as you go through the lesson, some people pick churches like they do breakfast cereal. Breakfast cereal is either puffed wheat or puffed corn with different cartoon characters on either one. And lots of sugar on either one. But generally, you're either buying puffed corn or puffed wheat, one way or the other. But you go down that aisle in Walmart, how many brands of cereal are there? Dozens. I mean, you've got every kind in the world. Some have pictures of famous people. Some say they're healthy. Some say they're fun. Some have cartoon characters, whatever it may be. It's actually really not much different as far as the ingredients from one to the other.
There's the original cereals and the generic cereals.
Okay, you got the original and generic. That's right. And the generic are always a whole lot cheaper. Well, a lot of people, even though they're all the same thing, a lot of people look at churches and they're the same way. What church do I want to be a part of? And they're like, okay, I like this preacher, but I don't really like their singing. Okay, I like the people here, but I really don't like that building. I like the programs here, but man, worship goes like 2.5 hours. And you go back and forth, and sometimes we get paralysis because there's so many different choices that we never really ever make a choice and make sure that we're right. So here's my criteria I wrote down, and tell me if you have some others. What should help you pick a good congregation? First of all, it's got to be one that gets you to heaven. Doctrinally sound. They preach the Bible. They teach God's plan of salvation. They worship the correct way. You need a doctrinally sound church. But there's more to it than that. You need a church that's sound, but also a church that helps you to grow spiritually. If you're a member of this church, does it help you get closer to God? Is it a church that there's tools, that there are things that are there that help you to be a better Christian. And thirdly, is a place where you can develop relationships. People from days past, generations past, said that when somebody places membership at a church, if they don't make 2 friends, and definition of friend is they notice if you're not there the next Sunday. If you don't make 2 friends in the next month, you're not going to be there in 6 months. You need to have somebody who knows your name, somebody who cares about you, somebody who at least knows the basics about you. And so I had those 3 criteria. What other criteria would you add? What you got, Philip?
I would add to that the opportunity to serve.
Okay. A place where you can serve, place where you can be active. Okay. Okay. That's good. What else would you have? Okay. See, that's a good list. That's why you teach the auditorium class, right? Okay. Now, next we're going to talk about the church and an analogy used throughout the New Testament, the church and marriage. And this, of course, goes back to Ephesians 5:22-33. You know, husbands, love your wives even as Christ loved the church. And you go through there and you see that analogy which is there. It's good to think of the church as the bride of Christ. And I think one of the good things to look at there in many ways is a lot of people don't choose to attend church very often, just like a lot of people today don't get married. We have more people today who are not married over the age of 25 than ever before. In some ways, maybe that's good, but way back in the day, people got married a lot younger, didn't they? And especially ladies, all ladies got married. If you didn't get married, you're kind of weird in some ways, is what people would think sometimes. Why is it that more people today are not married? Why would you say? Huh? Oh, you're just living with somebody. It's a lot easier without the commitment. Now, I'm not talking about what God says. I'm talking about what people think, okay? It's a lot easier without the commitment of breaking up, you know, to live with somebody. Yeah.
You can't walk away as easily as if you're just living with someone.
Yeah. If you're living with someone, you can just walk away any moment.
Anytime.
Yeah. If you're married, it's much more difficult.
It makes you have to go back and actually work.
And so you have to work on it. Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we live in a society where we no longer fix things and make them work.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't work, we just throw it out and get a new one.
We live in a, yeah.
And that carries over to marriage.
Yeah. We live in a culture where things are not supposed to last, right?
Some people just haven't found the right.
And some people just haven't found the right person. Yeah. The culture, things don't last like they used to. You know, some of y'all may still have the mustard green refrigerator. Remember, is it mustard green? And what's a green? Harvest gold. I'm sorry, harvest gold. Okay, harvest gold. And what's the green one called? Avocado green. All right. And the reason why you would still have those glorious, luxurious colors is because back then you bought a washing machine or refrigerator. It's going to outlive you, your children's, and your children's children, right? Yes. Okay, the 60s. The 60s was the zenith right there. Okay. And we had the commercials of the Maytag man. And what's the Maytag man doing in the commercial? He is bored silly because it never breaks, okay? Now, you go to buy your washer, your refrigerator, whatever it may be. How many years you looking at that thing lasting? 5 years, maybe? Okay, whenever the warranty's out, all right? Yeah. All right, here goes Hesta. All right, what do you got? Your dryer is how old?
70 years old.
She's got a dryer that's 70 years old.
Wow.
Are you talking about Doug? Oh, it's been repaired.
My husband repaired everything,
Yes.
but it hadn't been repaired in a while because he's been gone.
All right. Her husband's fixed it, but her dryer is 70 years old. Hesta's dryer is 70 years old. You're on your second washer and dryer. Okay, all right. What brand? Maytag. Okay, all right. And so we come from a place where your washer and your dryer are 70 years old. Nowadays, you know, it's a disposable thing and you just run through it. Cars are that way, right? Some folks have a car, new car every little bit. And some people, you know, in marriage, it's that way. You know, they seem to go through them pretty quickly. And sometimes maybe we find people who are that way with churches. I don't think it's so much at this congregation, but there's sometimes where there is just a great migration. You know, somebody will be somewhere, not 70 years, maybe 3 or 4, now we're at a new one, 3 or 4, now we're at a different one, 3 or 4, now we're at a different one. And washer and dryer, refrigerator, no big deal. What happens when you change churches every 2 or 3 years? What are some of the downfalls to that? I'll get to you, Dan. Is there a downfall to that? It's hard to develop roots. Yeah, what you got, buddy?
You were asking about why youngsters don't get married.
Yes.
It's because they've seen so much that nobody gets to know the person they marry. They meet and they fall in love and they get married because that's what TV does. And then they realize, I can't imagine why I did this.
Yeah.
And so then you have your divorce. And that's our culture now.
Yeah.
It's instant gratification. And if you don't like it, stop it.
Right. And we have this instant gratification idea with marriage to where it's just easier to get out and we'll go find our true love, the person I was really made for. And, you know, that kind of goes on some. Yeah, yeah. In a Hallmark movie, you're in love in 15 minutes. Yes.
I said, what fairy tale is that?
Yeah, right, right. Absolutely.
But I also think the 70s had a lot to do with marriage falling apart. People were getting divorced back then.
Uh-huh.
Just because of the society's mindset, women going into the workplace, the roles got reversed.
Yeah.
You know,
What's the role of a husband? What's the role of a wife?
right.
And that's a nuclear question for a lot of people, you know. And so, and when you don't know what the role of a husband and a wife are, and you don't know what the differences in gender are and how to relate to one another, putting them in a relationship and saying, okay, till death do us part, that's a tough thing.
And that can be just as confusing then to try and find a church.
Yes.
They have a different way of doing
Yeah.
things.
What do you expect of your church members? You know, and all that. So there's a good idea of how that works together. And so that happens. Like I said, if you bounce churches, and I'm not saying you should not bounce. You need to go where it helps you to grow spiritually. But if you bounce a lot, or if you bounce a time or two or whatever, if you don't take time to develop roots, it will get easier and easier for you to miss a Sunday. It'll be easier and easier for you not to participate and not to be involved in a church and in a congregation. Now, Tom Holland, he's passed on now. He is one of my favorite preachers, preached in Nashville forever. He'd always tell his preacher students, he'd say, as a preacher, don't go preach for the perfect church, because if you go to the perfect church, you show up, it's going to suddenly become imperfect. And, you know, that's kind of tongue-in-cheek that he would say. But what he was saying was, there's no such thing as a perfect church. Now, there's some churches who really pretend at it pretty well, but it's a perfect plan of God, but it's fulfilled by imperfect people. And so you can go to any congregation and find a woolly booger kind of a person somewhere, or something that is just does not fit you exactly. But what you do is you work through those situations, you work through that, and the best way to have a better congregation is for you to be a better Christian. You make the church become what you desire the church to be. And some people say, I don't think it's true here, but after 5 to 10 years, the congregation will take on the identity or the personality of the preacher. Thankfully, that hasn't happened here, right? But I think that's true with every one of us members, okay? When you're involved, the church takes on your personality because you're the one doing this project or you're the one that's helping with this program. And so the way to make a congregation better is to be better and to be involved. And you can do a lot of good things with that, okay? Now we're on the back side of this page. The preacher went a little long this morning, so we have to go a little faster. Those preachers get in our way. All right. A fella put out a thing. It was on YouTube, but at several different places. Reddit, also TikTok. I'm spiritual but not religious. And he recited a poem that he had made while he walked down some railroad tracks, and it just lit the world up. This is about 10 years ago. Spiritual but not religious. I am spiritual but don't need the church. Give me Jesus but not the church. And more or less that's what it says. What's the issue with saying I follow Jesus but I'm not part of the church? Jesus is the church. All right. It's like you're walking around with a head without a body. And you're like, this is my best friend, this beheaded person here. It's pretty grotesque, right? It's like saying, hey, I like your husband, but the wife, she's got to stay home. All right? Is that going to go over very well? Okay. I like the founder of the movement, but I don't like what the movement has become. All those don't work. You can't have Christ and not have the church because the church is the embodiment of Christ. And you can't say I'm religious and not be a part of the Lord's church. When you read through your Bibles, what you see in Philippians 1:1, Paul writes and addresses it. And he says, to the elders, to the deacons, and to the saints. When you look over in Acts 9, you look over in Acts chapter 9, when Paul came to Jerusalem, he needed to be a part of the church. Barnabas wrote a letter so that the people would accept him. What you notice as you go through the Bible is there's no such thing as a Christian that's not in a church. Now, yes, you had apostles and missionaries, but a person who lived in Rome went to the Roman church. A person who lived in Thessalonica went to the Thessalonican church. You can't be a Christian and not go to church. Now, there are a lot of people who want to, and a lot of people who say they do, but you're added to the church, Acts 2:47. You need to be in a congregation to be what God wants you to be. Are you stretching?
No.
Okay.
That brings up mine. Then what about those, like we associate with our YouTube and stuff that we
Yeah.
broadcast stuff to those that cannot make it to the church and that's all they have?
Yeah.
Then what? I mean, what
And that's a great point to bring up. She talks about those who are shut in and can't come. She talks about those who can only watch online. I don't know if it's still true. I guess I probably should know. During COVID, there was a congregation outside of, I think it's Princeton, New Jersey, who just ran our services for their church services. They just have a TV, and they met together. It's a congregation of about 20 people, and we were there singing. We were their preacher. And that's kind of how that worked. And I know out west, a lot of churches will do that because there's not a lot of preachers who are out there and such. What about those who are shut in? And there are a lot of situations where a person just can't leave home. And I'm not saying they're lost, but I'm saying as a healthy Christian, as a Christian who has the ability, you need to be around God's people. What happens if you're a Christian and you don't go to church? Okay, unless you serve and unless you are served, it's hard to grow spiritually. You need people around.
That's what the broadcast and stuff is there for them.
It's there for them.
If they don't have any other option, that's what they have, and that's what
They absolutely need that. Yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree. The two most powerful outreach tools we have is this video and our website. And that's two things we've really got to emphasize because there's a lot of people who watch it and a lot of people who survive spiritually on what we're putting out.
I know, I mean,
Yeah.
everybody knows my situation with the
Sure.
But when I watch,
Yeah. And you're with us in that situation.
but you also see other people that you don't even know.
That's true. That's true. That's right. Oh, it's okay. But you're right. It's important for us to incorporate everybody that we can and to reach out as far as we can.
I mean, that's my lifeline.
Right, right.
I can't be here, but you also
Yeah.
see other people.
And I think about,
I mean, I see from
yeah,
other countries that
yep.
are on our
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And so it is a good thing. Yes, sir? Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's right. Next week, Lord willing, we will finish up this class. Okay? Thanks for being here. Now, remember, we meet on Tuesday, not Wednesday.